Hi everyone, this is Lada from Astrolada.com and the long expected conversation with Channing, one of my colleagues, someone I've been working for a few years with, I've known personally. I'm so excited to present Channing Ayers. She's a Vedic astrologer. Hi Channing, how are you?
Hi Lada, I'm great. It's really nice to see you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today and to talk for such exciting topics. Can you tell us a bit, because I know we both studied, at least one of our teachers is the same, who is, I studied with Ernst Wilhelm, and I studied also with, I've taken some of Ryan's courses as well. So can you tell me how and where did you learn astrology? How did it all happen?
Well, I was born into it. My mom was an astrologer. She started studying when she was 18, so she was very hooked on it, and I kind of had it from birth. And so she was a Western astrologer, and then her best friend was a Vedic astrologer. So we had both in the house. We were always talking about both the zodiacs and different techniques growing up, and I mainly studied Western for a long time, and then I wanted to go quite a bit deeper with it because I felt like I just felt like I wanted to know more concrete, kind of less of the psychology and more of like how to do predictions. And so I started studying the Vedic a little bit more in depth, and now I use the Vedic techniques and I use the Western tropical zodiac. So I use some of both.
So tell us why do you use the Vedic? I'm the same. I use Vedic techniques with Western tropical astrology. Can you tell us why you chose this path? Because it's very unconventional.
It is. It's unconventional, but there's more and more Vedic astrologers kind of experimenting and using the tropical zodiac. And I found it works more accurately for me. I used to use both. I'd look at this and I'd look at that, and I'd have both the charts. And even sometimes you'd think, you know, I've had readings done where people have used both and said one is a soul chart and one is a, you know, the more personal chart, your personality. But when I started blending them together and using the tropical calculations, it's not that it's not accurate in the sky, it's that we're using it from Earth. So we're using it from the standpoint of being incarnated on Earth. And so we're using the equinoxes, and the sun revolves around and rises in the same place each time. And so the zodiac is based on lining it up from being incarnated on Earth.
So that's kind of our local Earth zodiac, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And so for me, and I don't know, maybe it's because I was born in a Western body, so I just have always aligned more with the impact and the aspects of the Western zodiac, although I have spent years and years using both. And even sometimes I still dabble, I still go back and look at the sidereal just to kind of keep myself working with that. And I think there's probably things that you can use it for. It's not that you need necessarily pick one or the other. It's just that for me, it's felt a lot more accurate, and it's made a lot more sense in my life. Having it with me my whole life, I'm much more aligned with the Western zodiac and what it's brought. And using both of them, it just makes more sense to me.
Yes, so. The tropical zodiac is a solar zodiac, and the sun is our star. Why should we base our zodiac on the other stars when we have one star right here? And the tropical zodiac, I believe that everything, just like the atom repeats, the solar system repeats the structure of the atom. It's like a hologram in a hologram in a hologram. For me, it's the same, like one system in another. I believe in the bigger the sidereal zodiac, but I believe it's like for bigger predictions like eras and ages. And then the other one is a repetition of the sidereal, but on a smaller scale for the personal life of the person, which is the tropical. That's how I perceive it, at least.
Yeah, that's what it felt like with me. And if you want to really get into it, Ryan's got a four-part series on his. Ryan Kurtzik has a 4-part series on the Asheville Vedic astrology, just picking it apart, talking about all these different aspects and angles and different books, because it's never really mentioned in the Vedic scripture exactly how to use it. They don't say you've got to use the sidereal. They acknowledge both. So they acknowledge the solar equinoxes and they acknowledge the sidereal lineup of the planets. So there's not an actual sentence, I believe, in there that says line the charts up this way. So we've been left to kind of try to interpret which one they meant. And so when you start getting into all the historical evidence, you start seeing, you know, which systems used what, and that it was actually used in ancient times. So it's not as controversial as it needs to be. I think it'd be really fun if more people wanted to experiment with it, because it definitely has a lot of merit to it. So.
Oh yeah, I've seen amazing results. I mean, absolutely stunning results with tropical using Vedic techniques. But for those of us, because most of the people on this channel, they used to Western astrology techniques, and they will be probably very excited to experiment with some Vedic techniques, which I've been trying to teach as well, but I don't have any courses on that. But it's kind of, can you, like, we can both discuss them because we both studied the same thing, and I'd love to discuss. What would you like us to give an example of simple Vedic techniques? Because some people might be overwhelmed. Oh, a totally new astrology. That I can't use those techniques outside separately. I need to know the whole Vedic system in order to apply it to my chart in Western. But it's not so. You can take very small pieces and apply them immediately in your reading chart.
Yeah, you can. And it doesn't take the place of studying and knowing your astrology. So you've got to know your basic houses, signs, and planets. That's the basics. I mean, we've all got to know that. You can't skip around that. There's, you know, and there's cookbook astrology where you kind of put it all together. But the more you just know your houses, your signs, your planets, the more you're going to be able to understand all of it. And it's all going to click in like that. But there are some techniques that are really powerful that aren't going to be super, super overwhelming to learn piece by piece. And one of them that I started out that really helped me was the whole house system.
Oh,
the whole house system. That's a big one.
I use it all the time, yeah.
Because when you get into Western astrology and there's 100 different ways to slice it up, and you get intercepted signs and you start trying to interpret all that, if you just use a whole house system, and that goes along with, you start looking at the ruler of that house for that area of life, that's going to give you so much clarity. And then you can get into cusps, which are the actual degrees that are located within the houses. But you don't even need to get into that right away. If you just start looking at these signs, this 30-degree area, the sign is going to govern, like, say, your whole first house. You know, so your first house isn't going to be half in one sign and half in another sign, or what, you know, it doesn't start at the degree of your ascendant. It's the whole sign is your first house, and the planets.
For example, now someone has their sun in Libra at 29 degrees, and it's in the first, and this is the ascendant. This is where the ascendant is as well, the first house. So you'd consider, so the ascendant is at 29 degrees, sorry. Your ascendant is at 29 Libra. So the moment Jupiter enters into the first degree of Libra, even though it's not going to reach the 29 degree a year later, it's already affecting that first house. Have you noticed that?
Definitely. So that's the deal, is that you have your ascendant degree is somewhere located in there. So you're going to feel it the most strongly when a planet comes closest to that degree. And so that's where the cusps come in. So you know the degrees, and that's an actual transit to that degree. And you're going to have an impact on your life when something happens. But the whole house, that whole 30 degrees. So yeah, when Jupiter comes in, when Venus comes into the sign of Libra, all those people who have Libra as their ascendant, which is coming up soon, it's going to be really fun for them. So, you know, and knowing that, not thinking, okay, it's not going to happen until it hits 29 degrees, you know, so you can actually utilize that transit, you know, start expanding.
Does it give events as well before it hits a degree? Have you noticed that it gives events before it hits the exact cusp of a?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Especially if you say you have, well, in the Vedic astrology, they use Jupiter and Mercury as the manifesting planets. So when you get Jupiter and Mercury together in a sign, it's going to really be bringing something. It's going to manifest something. So when, you know, watch these transits, when Jupiter and Mercury are both in the sign of Libra, that's going to bring something to a Libra ascendant, or to whatever house that is from your ascendant. So anyone can use this technique. And you can look and watch it bring in, you know, something concrete. Something will be birthed when Jupiter and Mercury get together, and it's usually beneficial. Yeah. So Yeah, those are the beneficial ones.
Okay, then another question. Say Libra is in your second house. You know, you have Scorpio ascendant. Let's give an example. But there is no cusp in your second house in Libra, in the second sign from Scorpio. Say your second house cusp falls in Sagittarius.
Right.
You know. But
Right.
the second sign from ascendant will be Libra. When Jupiter enters into that second sign from your ascendant, even though there is no cusp there, second house cusp, will it still, have you noticed that it can still manifest as a Jupiter transit the second house, bringing financial increase or anything?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And it will, you know, it will vary to degrees on what dignity, and we'll get into that in a second, but how Jupiter's doing and what's with Jupiter and that kind of thing. But it definitely, it will be expanding your financial resources. It'll be expanding your energy and your opportunities towards looking for, seeking out, having opportunity for your financial, your whole area of life that has to do with your finances, resources, and also, you know, family, early childhood and family, because that's a resource. So that's connected with the second house. Friendships are connected with the second house, because that's a resource as well. So there's a little more expanding. When you get into the Vedic, you can expand the meaning of the houses a little bit more. They include more. It's not different. It's just that there's more, because everything under the sun can be ruled by something. In astrology,
by house and by planet. So there's only 7 planets and there are only 12 houses, so everything would be there. And what happens then when Jupiter goes and your third house cusp stays in Sagittarius, second house cusp from Scorpio?
Then that's an actual event. That's a money event. So when you have Jupiter hitting that exact degree of the second house cusp, then you're going to find some sort of boost financially, you know, or some sort of new job or some sort of opportunity, or somehow something connected with the second house is really going to be bringing in, you know, something pleasant for you, because Jupiter is the planet of nice, pleasant things usually. So
even while Jupiter is still in the second sign, without any cusp, but it's in the second sign from the ascendant, it's already expanding your ideas, the kind of starting to you being more attuned to finding opportunities. Okay, so maybe it's more like on the psychological level, preparing you somehow. But because that's how that's how I envision it. The house cusps the specific events, and even if they don't fall in the same sign, that is the second sign from ascendant, or the fourth house cusp might fall in the fifth sign from ascendant or in the third. But the moment when planet transits, it gives specific events to that house cusp. But when it transits the sign from the ascendant, like whole sign influence, I notice it because the ascendant is you. The ascendant is how you perceive reality. How do you react to those things? So when a planet, say, transits the fourth sign from your ascendant, even without the fourth house cusp there will be some kind of, to your consciousness, to how you perceive events, there will be, you know, this opportunity for property or whatever fourth house indicates. So tell us a few different things about the houses, how Vedic and Western houses, can you add to Western astrologers what Vedic houses rule differently so they can add it to their calculations when they're looking at transits?
Yes, well, I mean, just studying just a little bit is going to give you a whole world of information about these houses. Which houses? The trine houses are the houses. The first, the fifth, and the ninth are the houses that bring fortune. The Dashtana houses, the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th, those are the houses that create difficulty. Just knowing those basics and how they describe the houses are going to let you know a little bit more about transits that you're having. So you may be having a transit from the ruler of one of these houses onto, you know, the ruler of yourself, like your ascendant lord. That could show either something benefic happening or something that you want to watch out for, so you can be prepared for that kind of experience. But just knowing the general nature of the houses and what the houses are ruling gives you such a foundation, so much more expansion. And so, you know, I've scoured so many Western astrology books. It wasn't until I got into the Vedic that it really started fleshing it out even more, because it gives you not only more information about the houses, but then you can look at each house from a house. So you've got your second house from Venus. You know, there's your partner's finances. your second house from Jupiter, there's your husband, there's your children, the things that these planets naturally rule as well can give you more information. It's called, I guess when they do it house from house, it's called Bhavat Bhavam. So
yeah. Just like the fifth house can be the house where you lose your job because it's the eighth, which is ending, the 10th, which is career. So they can be like a big reversal when Saturn or some planet transits there in some way. Or it's, definitely it brings so much meaning there. Is there a way to look at first spouse, second spouse, third spouse, or first child, second child in Vedic astrology?
We've talked about this a lot. You can definitely go fifth from fifth. That's what they've talked about, that kind of thing. But it's also about the dashas. And we haven't even talked about the dashas yet, but the dashas can show different things too, because which planet is going to be ruling which area of life. That's a real interesting one, because I definitely go back and forth with the Western. They use a lot of that, like the fifth from the fifth is going to be the second, or the child of your child, or you could even say the third from the fifth, because that's a sibling of your child. So there's different things that they use. And I've kind of dabbled in all of it. So I kind of play around with different techniques there and just see kind of which ones click in, which ones I feel and intuitively are giving me that information. But let's talk about the dashas a little bit, because that can even flesh out some more with these planets. And these are another really important aspect that goes along with just learning the basic nature of how to expand on the meanings of the planets, the meanings of the signs, the meanings of the houses. The dashas are based on the nakshatras. The dashas are based on the stars. So that's how we kind of get that involved in there. And the dashas are like the wick of your karma. So it's like burning down your planetary trends. So you get born into a certain dasha, and each dasha is a fixed amount of time, and that shows the ruler of the time that you have in that life. And so whatever that planet is saying in your chart is more likely to show up. The trend of whatever that is more likely to show up during that time frame. So when you put this together with the transits, it's really powerful in seeing what's going to happen. So, say you have, and the reason why I connected this with your last question is, say you have Jupiter rules children in the chart. So say you have one child and you have Jupiter transiting again, and you're in a Jupiter dasha, that could show, and it's in a place that has to do with either the fifth house or the third from the fifth or the first house. There's all these different ways you could kind of pull it in together. That could show that you're in a dasha that's really speaking to having more children. Then that could really bring it up. And so that's why in Western astrology, you can have a transit and you can expect something to happen, but it doesn't happen. And you don't understand why it's not going to happen. Or you can have one person where Saturn transits the moon, and it just is so difficult. It's the hardest thing they've ever had. Where another person just ends up becoming more introverted and doesn't have any problems at all. And that shows through understanding more about the dasha systems, because that planet that's ruling you is kind of on center stage during that time frame. So you're going to want to watch what happens to that planet in your chart and what happens from that planet in transit to give you more understanding of what's actually happening with those transits.
So basically, when, say, someone is in the Mars dasha, so they should really watch closely the transit of Mars to personal planets and the transits towards Mars in their horoscope, isn't it? Yeah, and what the state of that Mars is. Someone can have exalted Mars in Capricorn and can have the best time. Others can have Mars in the 8th house in Cancer and might get into a car accident or something.
Right. Yeah, it's really going to give you a lot more information of when certain things are going to happen in your chart, because it's not going to be, it's not going to be that every single moment. If you have Mars in the 8th house, you're going to get hurt every single day. But it does show that there can be a trend to getting a hit to the body, because the 8th house is our longevity and Mars is sharp, sudden things. So when we have sharp, sudden things connected with our longevity, we've got to watch out for a sudden incident that's, that could happen. But when is that going to happen? It's going to happen when you're in a dasha that talks about Mars. So these you have your Maha dasha, your main dasha, and then you have sub dashas. So learning a little bit about how to use the dashas is really powerful in really starting to concretize the transits and
Have you ever done a course on that? Have you ever done a course like simple reading of the dashas, how people to interpret them, like at first glance?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've taken lots of courses and but yeah.
Made one because you're highly sought astrologer. I mean, you always you're fully booked basically. Whenever I speak, you're like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. There are so many orders. So you're ready also to teach that, such kind of to teach people at the first glance how to use the dashas.
Yes, and my Amakarka talks about teaching in my chart, so you can get into that. Yeah. So that's coming up in a different dasha. I can see what's happening.
I'm Venus Atmakaraka as well, Ernst as well. So that Venus is the planet of teaching in Vedic astrology, by the way.
Yeah, Venus. Well, I have Mars, but it's in the nakshatra that it's in talks about the platform for teaching and how that all fits in. But yeah, and solving problems, how to efficiently solve problems with that Mars, how to be effective and efficient, and just get straight to the chase, no nonsense. And
tell us a bit those Atmakarakas. This is Jaimini astrology, and I think it's fascinating. You don't need to know anything, but this is your soul planet, I call it, and translate it in Western language. This is your self planet, your soul planet, the planet that is most evolved for you in this lifetime, that becomes something like your vocation, a planet which can show what you're here to do, what your really great skills are that you've learned, possibly because it's the planet with the highest degree. For me, it's like it's walked the longest path, so it comes more wise here in a sense. Well, not necessarily, but it's kind of, it pulls you towards certain mission. Can you tell us about this a bit? Like, give us an example how people can find their soul planet, Atmakaraka, as we call it, and what they mean.
Yeah, I love the Amakaraka. That is such a wonderful technique in itself, and it's very easy to see because you can look at the chart and you can see which planet holds the highest degree, not meaning the planet that's on the top of the chart. If you're looking at the chart, it means the planet that has the highest degree within each 30-degree sign. So say you have your sun at 29 degrees, but it still can be like, on the north end of the chart, the bottom of the chart, that's still your Amakaraka. It has the highest degree in your chart. And, that's an interesting piece because since I've started studying with Ernst as well, we don't use Rahu and Ketu as the Atmakaraka, the north and south node. Those are not physical bodies. So we don't use them the same way that we use the planets, but that's a whole other subject. But so you've got your 7 basic planets that come in as an Atmakaraka, and you look at the sign that that's in, and that's going to give you some information about what your soul is here learning to develop in this lifetime. And we also use the Varga charts, which are divisional charts, using different calculations that's similar to like a decant in the Western astrology, like the first 10, the second 10, and the third 10 degrees. That's very common in Western astrology. This gets even more detailed with the Varga charts, and we divide things up in lots of degrees. But the Navamsha, if you look at the Atmakaraka in the Navamsha chart, the D9, the sign that it falls in there is a big deal. It shows you the challenges you're going to have in your life. So say your Amakaraka falls in, like mine falls in the sign of Virgo. So there's all of this information that I've learned about Virgo, and having your Atmakaraka there. It's about developing skills. It's about good digestion and eating healthy and all the elements of Virgo, purity and purification. So understanding that my Amakaraka falls in Virgo has changed a lot of things about my life, because I now know that everything I do has to have a Virgo element to it.
But you have to look at it in the 9 divisional chart to see that sign.
Yeah.
And how is it different than the sign of the the self planet, the Atmakaraka, in the birth chart, in the first divisional chart?
Well, in the birth chart, it still has an impact. I mean, for me, it's in the same sign in both of them, so I kind of get that in the double method, in a double fashion. In the birth chart, what's important to see is the planets that it's with and the planets that are aspecting it. And we'll talk about aspects in a minute too, because that's a really important piece. But the planet that it's going to be conjuncting and the planets that are Rashi aspecting the Atmakarka are also kind of mold in the element of the Atmakarka. So say you have a Mars Atmakarka, but it's got an aspect from the moon with it. Well, then that means that you're also not only a Mars kind type, but you also a moon type. So you're going to have multiple planets affecting you. And from the birth chart, that's a really important thing to see. So from the birth chart, I pay more attention to the planets that the Atmakarka is with. And then I go into the Navamsha and I see the sign. And I see what, and then you can start counting from the Atmakarka. You can say, oh, okay, well, when you start looking at the 10th from the Atmakarka, then that gives you an element of career. When you start looking at the 12th from the Atmakarka, that gives you an element of your devotional, you know, what you're here to devote yourself to and your spirituality. When you look at the 7th from the Atmakarka, that can give you an idea about relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I use that from the Navamsha.
You use those from the Navamsha in that respect.
Yeah, I use a lot of those from the Navamsha. You can look at the Atmakarka in all the divisional charts. I mean, it's definitely a soul planet, so it carries over into each divisional chart. And you can start looking at, like, especially say you get your Atmakarka in the first house in a certain divisional chart. Well, that shows that that house is, you know, important, and that your Atmakarka's there. I also use it with different.
If you have your Atmakaraka in Mars, like we're talking, and in the 7 divisional chart is on the ascendant, children for this person will be of big importance, and so will relationships of some sort, isn't it? Or if it's in the 4th divisional chart in the ascendant, it would mean this person is born to develop property or something, or the house, the home, the family will be, and fortune development will be. Yeah, okay. So
it really, you can highlight what's important to the charts that are important to look at. If you just want to look at the divisional charts at a glance, start looking at the Atmakarka and all the divisional charts. And that sort of gives you the, you know, like which ones to really pay attention to and what the Atmakarka is with. So, yeah, I like it. I like that's a really easy one to learn too. That one's not, I mean, you can go as complex as you want, but just knowing what your Atmakarka is can really give you a lot of insight. If you're a moon person, or if you're a sun person, or if you're a Mars person, or a Jupiter person, just knowing what planet your Atmakarka is gives you such a background of where you're going to come from, how you're going to act, how your personality is going to trend towards.
It also can impact career, because this is one of the signification of vocation and career. Can you give us a quick like summary of, if you have your Atmakaraka, the sun, moon, just with a few professions or a few qualities that so a person can maybe get more interested in learning about that?
Well, sure. Like you were saying, Venus is the teacher. Venus rules the teacher. Venus rules astrology. Venus is also soothing and the nurse, and, you know, being able to help others feel good. Venus is also art and beauty, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of those kinds of associations. For me, Mars, it's interesting. I have owned a restaurant for 5 years where I cooked, and Mars is Shark Tank.
Yeah.
I have been doing gemstones for 17 years, and that is Mars rules things from under the earth. And I also, you know, love astrology because I always feel like it's one of the biggest puzzles, like a Rubik's Cube, you know? So Mars is about logic and how to like approach things and that kind of thing. So it's given me a very fleshed out, it's not just one thing, you know, I've done all and overlapped with a lot of these different things all my life.
You made your own jewelry with soldering and everything. That's metal, working with metal, and that's what you did for me.
Yeah, Mars is fire and forging and metal, and it's the spear, and it's also, you know, it also can have to do with service professions like, you know, police and firemen and that kind of thing. Mars is definitely, because it likes its energy to how to fix problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
maybe also strategist, because it's a very strategic planet, someone who kind of strategically, like a commander, but maybe in business in some sort.
Yeah. So Jupiter is one that's has to do with teaching as well, but it's also counseling. So it's giving people advice, it's ministerial abilities, and it's, you know, it's helping others see the bigger picture. So there's a whole element to Jupiter, wisdom practices and learning and teaching that can be very, you know, informative. Jupiter can help people get under knowing, you know, that kind of expansion. It can also be around children, working with children, because Jupiter is definitely connected with children. Let's see, we've got Mercury. Mercury is all about skills. So developing skills. Mercury can also be connected with music and art and writing and skills, that, yeah, crafts and using your hands, because Mercury rules the hands. And also information and knowledge. Mercury can have to do with technology and just being quick.
Marketing, organizing, all those kind of planning, administrative jobs. They're all Mercury, like accountant as well.
Yep. So that's all connected with Mercury, those kinds of skills and communication skills.
Lawyers,
the moon.
Mars, wouldn't they?
Lawyers are Mars. They can also have to do with Jupiter. They can also have to do with, there's connections. See, that's the thing. When you see your Amakarka being connected with another planet, then you sort of start putting the story together. So you start seeing, okay, you know, and then you can kind of look at the dashas when you start learning the dashas, and you can start seeing when different elements of this are going to come into play. So say you have, you know, a Mars, you know, Mars with the moon. Okay, so we haven't talked about the moon yet, but say you have Mars with the moon and you go into a cycle that has to do with Mars and the moon, then you may have more emotions attached to whatever you're doing, or you may become more intuitive with what you're doing, or you may have changes because the moon is changeable. So you may get more restless and you want, you know, Mars with the moon, you may feel like you need to like change it up and start doing different things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways to look at these planets, but just knowing these basics about each of the planets gives you a foundation. And when you apply it to that this is your soul planet, and you've got this basic foundation of knowing what all these planets are associated with, you can really tie it in with the career in big ways. And that's helpful. That can be really add a lot to anyone who's trying to decipher a chart.
Different combinations. You can be, as we said, you know, someone who is cooking with, at the same time with the moon. You know, it can give a different combination of Mercury with the moon can make a healer. Mercury with Venus can make a writer. Sorry, Jupiter with the moon can make a writer. There are different combinations for different careers. But can we carry on the basics again? We went to Jupiter, maybe now Sun.
Oh, the sun. Yeah, the sun is all about doing things for other people honorably. So it can have to do with the government. It have to do with your own purpose. The sun is definitely connected with the government, the bigger picture, larger organizations. But it also has to do with your dharmic purpose, your soul planet. So it's like a lot of people who have the sun are here to help teach other people how to be noble, how to be more honorable, how to shine. You know, the sun is going to be a lot about your self planet. So the government is kind of the go-to one when you see the sun. But I've seen a lot of people with sun out Makarka that don't have anything to do with that. But that's kind of what they say, the go-to one.
They inspire others in some way. They're like natural leaders in some way, I've seen. Or they often take positions of leadership in some way.
Yeah, exactly. They're leaders, and they help show other people. They're like king, you know, the king. The sun is like the king. And it's very consistent. You know, the sun is that consistency, that it rises every day, it sets every day. It has this consistent, you know, aspect to it.
I can where the people that have Atmakaraka, the sun, even where the sun is not strong, like Capricorn, Aquarius, they're super consistent. Nevertheless, if the sun is the planet with the highest degree, so reliable and nobility, despite the sun not being fully, you know, in a great strength, but it's powerful. This really works. Yeah, exactly. The consistency. Yeah. Moon, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's fine. Well, the moon's kind of the opposite, because the moon is like the rabbit, you know, she changes in different signs all the time. So the moon has this flow to it, you know, it's very much about getting inspired intuitively and wanting to go with the flow and the changeable nature of the moon, and more on the feeling things out, you know, being more emotional, being more intuitive, coming from the gut, you know. And kind of
that's the best way of strategy for success in life, rather than try to charge like a bull. They kind of have to be receptive. be open to what the universe will bring and respond then, kind of, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So if you know you're a moon person, but you're trying to be a sun person, you have a 9 to 5 and you're just trying to be super consistent, but it's driving you crazy because you're a moon person. This can be something, that deep inside you, but that you're trying to fit into a world that's asking you to be something different. So it can be inspirational to learn these types of things and to get a better sense of what is in your flow, what's going to help for you. And then Saturn, we didn't talk about Saturn. Saturn is hard work.
Repetitive. On the hamster wheel there. Maybe something to do with more, is it like, does it have to be physical, or it's not necessary to be physical? Does it have to be like agriculture?
It's not necessarily physical, but it is going to be, the way that I see Saturn, Saturn can be consistent as well. It's different than the sun, less about the inspiration, but more about not wanting to change, because it's a Tamasic planet, so it doesn't really want to change. It likes where it is usually, and it's endurance. It's the long haul. It's the hard work. It's reliable. Saturn's a lot about responsibility. So Saturn people tend to take a lot on. They tend to have a lot of chores and a lot of things and a lot of others to take care of, that kind of thing. It's responsibility and hard work, and it can be dirty jobs too. Saturn can be all about like getting your hands in there and having to do the things that other people don't want to do necessarily.
Yeah. Yes. Mars is not easy either. Mars can send you into the mines, possibly a combination of Saturn and Mars, or to do those hard jobs. But yeah, if your Atma Karaka, soul planet, is well respected, there is a way to check that. If it's in good dignity, then it's going to bring you great results, whatever you're doing. You're going to naturally flow to that, and have you noticed people that are very confused about their purpose in life, what their talents and skills are? How do you advise, like, what do you usually see in their horoscope? Do you see like some of them don't have clear indications, so that they just have too many indications that can be their career and they're confused? Or
no, there are so many things that can lead to that. But one of the things that I've noticed are learning about the North Node and the South Node. Those are some pretty important things in the Vedic astrology, because they're up there. They're in the pantheon with the rest of the planets. They've become immortalized. And there was a lot more depth to Rahu, the North Node, and Ketu, the South Node, when I started learning Vedic astrology. And usually if you have the North Node impacting something pretty strongly, it can create like a confusion. You don't have the same clarity always necessarily, because the North Node is like an eclipse. So it's fog and smoke and it's mist. So say you have something with the North Node, or you have it in your ascendant, or you have it with your ascendant lord, or with your Atma Karaka, it can amplify the need to develop this planet, but it can do it in a really confusing way. And so you can, you cannot necessarily be like, I'm clear about everything. It takes time for that planet to mature. And plus it's going to happen along with the dashas. So you're going to learn more, about the dasha you're in. Some dashas can be with a planet that doesn't have clarity. You can spend 10 years of your life, say, in a planet that's, clouded over. It's with Rahu, or it's, it's aspected with Saturn. So everything you try is lots of struggle. But then you move into a new dasha and boom, you're like, wow, everything just cleared up. It really is like a combination of learning some of these techniques.
Yeah. I had a client, she was in her late 50s, and she had Rahu with the sun in the 10th house. So only in her late 50s, she went into her Jupiter dasha. And only in her late 50s, she discovered what her talent is, made a business, it went bam, super successful,
Yeah. It changes, and it's amazing to see how the career can change, and how the clarity can change, and how the psychology can change when you start looking at the dashas. And also just knowledge about, so say you learn about that your Amakar, your self planet or whatever is with the North Node, then you can start actually doing things to start unraveling that. You don't have to wait until you're in your 50s necessarily, but you can start working with, more more meditation practices, or starting to learn North Node represents and what it rules and what it can actually create in your life, being connected with that planet. Like say you have it with Venus. Well, when you have Rahu with Venus, you're going to want lots of Venus things. You're going to chase after love and romance, and you're going to feel like you meet, you know, the love of your life every month. You know,
My little brother has that. He's in love with a different girl every few months. And always because the one that the most like extra feminine with big bosoms. And I hope he doesn't want
because he's learning how to develop that Venus, you know, so he's going to be, but if he understood
exaggerated expression.
Yeah, it's exact. But if he understood, oh, I need to learn more Venus things because I have the North Node with that, then he could be developing Venus things in a lot of different ways. He could start learning new musical instruments because Venus rules musical instruments. He could start taking art classes and knowing that he probably shouldn't get in a committed relationship very early. He shouldn't get married really early. He has got this thing time to develop, and that can really be beneficial in life choices.
So basically when one of your planets is kind of with Rahu, with one of the karmic nodes, and it's kind of, or blocked by Saturn, and if it depends, say it's a partner or love, and you can't really get it, you can't force someone or this kind of things, you start working on that planet in regards to what it signifies, but things that you can actually do and control on your own. Yeah. Like I said, in this relationship, if you want to improve your relationship, start taking art classes, maybe dancing, something, you know, kind of soothing, or talking with women more often, I don't know.
Yeah. Being around more Venus type things is going to help you develop your Venus, and knowing that that's what you're here partially to do. So yeah, I think the North Node can contribute to some confusion. Having planets in difficult houses can contribute to confusion. Knowing these Dashtana houses, like the 6th house, the 8th house, the 12th house, that can contribute to just having obstacles in your path, or getting bogged down with having to take care of other things before you really can follow your dharma, your purpose, what you're here to do. It's really just sort of seeing how it all clicks in, but it's definitely, you know, it's definitely eye-opening to understand a little bit more about some of these placements in these houses in the Vedic perspective, and just give you so much more clarity. And then you can see when it's going to be on and when it's not going to be on necessarily, you know, when you're going to have more, you know, potential to not be drugged down by that karma.
And what about Ketu, the south node of the moon? Well, what does it do from your perspective? What have you observed? Because I love both. Rahu and Ketu, I'm obsessed with them.
They're really interesting. Ketu is more, they say K2 is more of what you've done already in your past. So it can show the skills that you're coming in with in the past, and what you're here already, you have, but you're not going to necessarily be able to identify with that in this lifetime. So every time you try to identify with it, it sort of dissolves. It sort of falls apart.
The more you try to control it, to grab it, to hold on to it, the more it goes away. Like someone with Venus with Ketu, the more he tries to control relationships, so make them happen. Right. Go to find the relationship or control the wife or whatever, the more this person just runs away from them.
Yeah, and it can be powerful, and it's a very spiritual aspect. K2 is, because they say it's the dragon's tail. So the story is the head and the body get separated. So you've got the head that's sort of disconnected, and it's hungry, 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 and then you have the body that has the elixir of immortality in its body. It's felt the perfection of divinity. So it doesn't want to strive for anymore. It's experiencing divinity in its purest form. So it's actually satiated, and now it's ready to sort of let go. So it's not hungry for more. It's done in whatever the realm is that it's done, and it's pushing you towards that head, that Rahu that's hungry. So you can't, that's why
Ketu might be quite painful for Western society, because we know that we have to ask and want rather than be detached. If you have Ketu in the 7th house and they tell you, well, let go, relax about relationships, let go and let go. Well, everyone, the ideal is to find the best partnership or to find the right. It might be very hard to kind of develop a Zen attitude, whatever comes, I'll accept it, God, it's your will, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, and it's going to depend on the dignity, which we haven't even talked about yet. The dignity is very important when you look at Rahu and Ketu to see how they're going to pan out, how they're going to work. Because say you've done something in 10 lifetimes, but you didn't do it well, you know, so you still have attachments to it. You still like, darn it, I really wanted to get that right. But this lifetime, it's not your trip. It's not your soul's purpose. It's not where you're heading towards. So you can still be attached to those things and want those things, but yeah, it's not going to be detached from it. So life sort of forces you to detach from things. And that would be shown by the ruler of the North Node or the ruler of the South Node, and you would look at the dignity that they're in. So they wouldn't have a dignity on their own. And this is controversial as well because some Vedic astrologers look at it differently. They think certain signs, Rahu and Ketu, are more powerful in. But from the schooling that I've had, you look at the rulership of the sign that these are placed in to see how they're going to be doing. And you know, it's nice. Like, and one example I can give is that I have Ketu in my 5th house. And I have a child and I love her. We have a really great relationship. So it doesn't mean that I don't get children. 5th house is children. It doesn't mean I don't get to be creative. It doesn't mean I don't get these things. But I'm not the kind of mom who follows my kid around and tells everyone what she's doing and starts posting pictures of her everywhere and says, I'm her mom, this is who I am. You know,
so you have more detachment.
Yeah, it's a lot of detachment on it and letting her explore who she wants to be. And, you know, it's kind of a little bit alternative with the 5th house with K2 there because I've homeschooled her. So I haven't been as straight and narrow as the normal people go. I've kind of let her explore her world.
Liberation, isn't it? Ketu is a moksha point. Moksha on the highest level means liberation. So the less you try to control that your area of your horoscope where Ketu is, so the planet, the more you kind of allow it to come naturally, I guess, and even kind of sacrifice for some bigger ideal than what your vision is, the more it can come out in a sense.
Yeah.
And they also say the high manifestation of Ketu, when you work, and especially the dignity of the Ketu Lord is, I noticed it that actually you can have a very spiritual child with this position because Ketu on the higher level is spiritual. You can Ketu in the 7th house with good dignity, Lord, very spiritual partner, soul partner. Ketu in the 10th house, career or vocation that, or basically your legacy that people remember you with, that you dedicated to a high ideal for society or something. So that's there's a sense of sacrifice there with Ketu. When you sacrifice it for a high ideal done for personal, selfish reasons, it works out perfectly. If you do it for grabbing or getting something for the ego, you can't. It's just taken away from you.
I think that's the key word there is ego, you know, is identification. You can't identify with it as yours. Like, I came up with this. You dedicate it because you know that it's the elixir of spirit coming through you. It's a skill you've already developed. And it's a gift. And yes, you can have that gift and you can share it, but it's not you. It's not from you. It's not who you are. It's a spiritualizing. That's what I say about spiritualizing, is that it's less and less about the I self and more about the bigger picture and the creative energy that's brought us here.
Yeah,
so
I guess so. You see your child as a guest there for you, as a gift that you have to take care of, that you have to give the best you can, but it's a gift. It's not yours. It's not in your control to make, to direct, tell them who they are. Yeah, and with that, we can get a bit obsessive. We can actually try to, kind of impose our...
Well, even with K2, we can get obsessive. If it's difficult, especially say like you have K2 with Saturn, when you have K2 with a planet that you're supposed to let go of, and Saturn's about holding on, your whole life can be about learning this balance of learning how to let go. And so you can spend your life trying to hold on to everything, but experiencing a lot of frustration with it because it's not the direction you're necessarily going to be the easiest, most fun for you. But if you learn what that means, K2 with Saturn means you have to let go of being an authority and being in charge and telling everyone what to do, then you can kind of start nurturing that behavior, fake it till you make it kind of thing, and start learning how to relax a little bit and start working on whatever your North Node is telling you to do.
And usually, do you agree that if you go with the north-node direction, you can progress faster in life? Or is the, or did you not notice that? Or do you have to constantly balance? Or
it's a balance. It does. It seems like it's a seesaw. I mean, life isn't always going to present itself in ways that, you know, because of the dashas and because of the transits, we're not always at liberty to just focus on what we want. We have to go with what the planets are also manifesting. But it is good to have awareness about it and to start putting yourself in situations that may feel really challenging. I mean, the North Node is something you haven't done yet necessarily. So it can feel really uncomfortable. So it's not going to be something that everyone's always going to be putting themselves into. Now, sometimes I see people with a strong North Node in a really good dignity, and they're already doing it. You know, they're in their 20s or 30s. They're already flying at the door with what it is that they're supposed to be doing. But other people, I can see their challenges, you know, so they just feel, it makes them feel uncomfortable. And there's difficulty with setting themselves up into that situation, but life's going to constantly sort of push them into that more and more. So it's like, all right, just learn that you're going to be uncomfortable there and just get used to that, and you know, start being okay with being uncomfortable.
Wonderful. Very, very good way to explain it to people. Yeah, it's. I think this is the key to all horoscopes. One of the keys, the position of the South and North Node, basically.
Yeah, yeah, it's really powerful, and there's so much in there with the Vedic information because they have it preserved in their myths. They have it preserved in their stories. So you start understanding that the stories are stories of the planets and how they get along and how they like each other or they don't like each other, or how this works or how that works, and it starts making so much sense. It's not just a myth, it's information to our subconscious, to our psyche, our deeper parts of ourselves that these stories relate to, that are telling us about the human experience, the archetypes of the human experience. And everyone has a North and South Node. Everyone has these basic planets. You're not going to get away from it. You know, some places are stronger than others, but everyone has things, challenges, and everyone has strengths. And it's kind of picking apart what each one is so you can be more self-aware and be able to use those things with that knowledge. So it can be really helpful. The dignity, we didn't even talk, dignity. Dignity is something specific to the Vedic astrology that is really easy to learn and really powerful to understand which planets work well in which signs and which planets don't work well. And that kind of ties it in with the mythology, because all of these planets have friends, enemies, and other planets that are neutral to them.
That's
so
I love it. It showed so much that with Western astrology you couldn't see, basically.
Yeah, like in Western astrology, the moon and Venus are considered positive when they're together. But in Vedic astrology, the moon and Venus are considered negative when they're together because the moon is an enemy to Venus. And the way that you would explain this is Venus is your complete ability to devote yourself to what you love. Your guru, your partner, you know, your relationship, whatever it is that Venus is representing. The moon is your I self. The moon is your list.
Hello?
Of what you need. When you get your moon self, your list of needs in with your ability to devote, it can make things very ego-centered, and it can make things very about the I, instead of somewhere where you're going to be devoting yourself to the bigger picture, which is the beauty of Venus. You start making it all about yourself, or your partner starts making it all about themselves, that kind of thing. So learning this was really important, really valuable, because they're two benefic planets. You'd think Jupiter and Mercury were really good together, you know, when you look at the Western, but when you learn, oh no, Mercury is an enemy to Jupiter. Jupiter's the big picture and having hope and ideals and trust, and Mercury's details. When you get focused and bogged down on the details, it takes you away from the bigger picture and seeing the whole thing. So there's ways that these planets work that are described in the myths and in the understanding of who's friends and how each planet is going to work in each person's sign or each planet's sign. That can be really powerful in understanding.
Yeah, I remember that many people were surprised when I did the video Venus aspect Saturn, not the conjunction. I said this is a great aspect to have. And they're like, oh, that's the worst. You get heartbroken. Yes, it can bring some delays, but can you tell us why Venus and Saturn are friends?
Oh, because Saturn makes you able to endure hardship. So when you have Saturn aspecting Venus, you can endure hardship in love. So it means that you're not going to complain about all the little teeny details, that you're going to be able to like live in a cardboard box with your partner and wake up every day and be like, I'm with you. I love you. It's great. You know, it's not the same with the conjunctions. The conjunctions have their own elements.
The Saturn conjunctions are totally different. They always starve.
Yeah, they starve. So that's what's known as the avashtas. The Lajatati avashtas kind of give you an idea of how each of these planets work when they're with each other. So when Saturn is with another planet, the avashta is starvation. So it always starves a planet that it's with. And that can have, you know, delaying effects on that planet to various degrees, depending on what sign that Saturn's in, depending on how strong the other planet is. So that's why you can get a Saturn-Sun conjunction in one person's chart and they have major self-confidence issues. But you can get Saturn-Sun conjunction in another person's chart and they're totally fine. They just go to work, they work hard. After a few years, they've developed self-confidence. Is not a big issue. And that has to do with the dignity that each of those planets are in and how one is going to be strong in a certain sign, one is not going to be strong in a certain sign. Or say you get two planets together that are both really strong, like say Saturn and Mars, they're enemies. Well, Mars is an enemy to Saturn, right? Saturn's not necessarily an enemy to Mars, but Mars is an enemy to Saturn because Mars is pushy. Pushy action, and Saturn likes to be still and take time and have a long haul. It would be huge, like in the sign of Capricorn, where Mars is exalted and Saturn is in its own home. That's huge. That person is going to feel a lot of pressure and a lot of tension. But say you get Saturn and Mars together in Cancer, where Mars is weaker, that Mars is not going to be impacting Saturn that strongly. So you're not going to have as much of the push. Now, Mars isn't going to be able to like speak up or take care of things necessarily. It's going to be starved by Saturn and in a debilitated sign. So it's like learning how these planets act in each of these signs, learning how...
What is worse, to have weak planets in weak dignity, but when they're together with enemies, they don't hurt each other? Or is it better to have two well-dignified planets like Saturn and Mars and Capricorn? They're both capable planets, but they're in war, so kind of sometimes really hard to say, actually.
Yeah, it's hard. And I mean, once you start learning what the houses mean, then you can start getting a bigger picture because you can see what house that's in. So say it's in the 5th house, that's going to have a your pin, you're creating all the time. But say it's in the 12th house, it's going to be behind the scenes. It's going to be hidden. It's going to be a part of you that no one ever sees, and it's going to be more internal and the struggle for moksha and liberation. So the house it's in is going to have a lot to say about how these planets are going to play out and the sign they're in and the dignity they're in. But this is not that hard to learn.
Yeah.
You know, this is not that hard to learn. It's really fascinating. And that's the thing with astrology, is that once you're hooked into it, once you start seeing where, you know, what you can actually learn from it, my experience is you don't really want to stop. You know, you just, it might not be that you have all the time in the world to study and become a scholar. You know, you might not be Brahmin with it and want to just study every single ancient text there is, but you can study, you can break it down and you can study certain techniques and apply it to what you already know and to get amazing results from it.
Yeah. Wow, wow, wonderful. And maybe for concluding words, because we're coming up to the hour and you've been like a treasure trove of knowledge and you speak so easy, you explain so easy, I'm hooked up as well. Can you tell us what are the most difficult combinations for love you've seen in clients from your own observations for a few people? Or maybe should we say the most positive ones? I don't know. Negative or on the positive?
That's a whole subject. Oh my goodness. That is, you know.
Maybe we should do another interview fully
Yeah, we could do another one because that I could talk an hour or two about that. There's so many things in there that could speak to difficulties, and that, you know, from the Vedic perspective, you know, you've got Jupiter as your karaka for a woman. Jupiter's the karaka for the husband.
Yeah.
And so you want to have a good, strong Jupiter for a woman. Venus is the karaka, the ruler of women for a male. So you're going to want to have a good Venus. And then you just start there, you know, and then you can look at your 7th house lord.
Hello.
And then you can look at Amsha and what aspects, you know, Rashi aspects. Those are really, really powerful too, which most astrologers don't use Rashi aspects at all. Vedic or
even Vedic astrologers don't use Rashi aspects, and they're the really powerful ones, actually. Yeah,
they're really powerful, and anyone who's watching this can Google Rashi aspects and learn in 10 minutes what that means, and you know but that's a sign-based aspect. It's different than the trines and the squares. Now the trines and the squares and the sextiles and the oppositions, those are all Tajika, so those are all from Persia. They moved to Greece. They kind of attached themselves to the Greek philosophers, and they moved with the Western astrology, and they moved to India. So they're also incorporated in the Vedic astrology. But the Rashi aspects, that's from Gemini, and they're so powerful. When you start learning what the Rashi aspects can do, and you start seeing that in coordination with transits and whatnot, you start seeing with the Rashi aspects.
And what do the Rashi aspects, with your observations, do they give more concrete events? They're better for predictions in transits, for example, as well. How are they different than the traditional Tajika, as we call Western aspects transits?
They really line up what's getting involved in that area of life. So right now, say we've got Saturn and Mars in the sign of Sagittarius, and we also have Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and the North Node in the sign of Virgo. And then we've got Neptune. I even use outer planets in transits, and the South Node in the sign of Pisces. So these signs all Rashi aspect each other, and then you throw Gemini in there. So these 4 corners of the chart, this Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, all interact with each other. So whatever those signs are in your chart, in anyone's chart, whatever the houses are, because all the planets are in those signs, and they're tied in many ways. We've got Saturn that's been impacting Jupiter. So Jupiter's been trying to manifest and move forward, and Saturn's been there blocking it. And now Jupiter has finally sort of broken out of this degree of Saturn. And so now things are fine. Jupiter's finally able to kind of move things forward. So this week, as Mercury's in there, all these planets are in there, there's manifestation happening. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone's starting to feel it, like, oh, okay, I'm finally starting to make the money I've been wanting to make, or but you know, the communication's moving, or these things. I'm starting to feel more hope and optimism. But Mars is also impacting with Saturn, so there's still this tension, and they're still wanting to move forward, but we still have to slow down because Saturn's like moving direct. So it's really interesting. The Rashi aspects are so on, and they're impacting those 4 signs so specifically.
That's I've been having the biggest, because I do monthly videos, and I know it's very general, but Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, and Sagittarius have 3 times as many views as anyone else, because obviously they've been triggered, those people, by all those planets affecting Rashi aspecting. This is not Western aspect. Russian.
No. So it's like in Western, you'd look at it and it would work to a certain degree, because you'd say, okay, this is a square, or this is an opposition. But, you know, what we're going to see, like in a few years or in a year and a half, when Saturn moves into the sign of Capricorn, we're going to see the signs that get Rashi aspected by, you know, along with Capricorn. So that's going to be Scorpio. It's going to be Leo, and it's Taurus. So Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus and Capricorn are all going to get impacted by that Saturn. So you wouldn't know that with the Western aspects. You wouldn't see that strong Saturn influence. And it's not necessarily bad, because Saturn's going to be in a good dignity. So those signs themselves are going to have a good dignity. Saturn impact means they're going to have endurance. They're going to be able to deal with the suffering. They're going to be able to follow through with long-term commitments. They're going to be able to kind of put themselves in line with doing the hard work that they need to do. But yeah, without knowing the Rashi aspects, you're not going to be able to see that impact from those planets.
Well, but still, when Saturn is in Capricorn and it's going to square Aries and oppose Cancer, do you think, I still see that the Western aspect also works psychologically, affect you? If you have, say, planets in Cancer or planets in Libra and Saturn goes in Capricorn, you're going to feel that psychologically.
Yeah, and that's, it's interesting because you get into like how it's going to aspect a planet. So say Saturn is squaring a planet in Aries. If you have a planet in Aries, you're going to feel that. But if you don't have a planet in Aries, you're not going to feel that Saturn squaring Aries, whatever that house is. But if you don't have a planet in that Rashi aspect, in that house, you're still going to feel it to that house. You're still, because they're sign-based, it's still going to bring whatever it is. And so, that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this video, is Jupiter and Mercury. So Saturn's one of those ones that is, a planet of dissolving. It might restrict things or take things away. But if it's in a good dignity, it's going to help you endure the hardship, and you'll be able to follow through. And so the end of that transit, you'll be able to see the results of all your hard work. Jupiter and Mercury, when you get Jupiter and Mercury in their Rashi aspecting a house. So say you don't have any planets in your fourth house, but you got Jupiter and Mercury Rashi aspecting your fourth house. That's going to be bringing in a really great manifestation for the home. Maybe you renovate, or maybe you get some new furniture, or maybe you find the home that you've been looking for, or maybe you finally, move to that dream place that you've always wanted to go. So it's not planetary based. The squares more planetary based, and those to the degree. So they have to do with the orb of that planet meeting up with the transiting planet. The Rashi aspects, they're just either on or off. So that Jupiter is going to be Rashi aspecting that area of your chart for a whole year while it's in transit. So it's going to be really pumping out good things for that whole year.
Especially every time Mercury comes and joins it, or Rashi aspects together a mutual house with Jupiter. It's been crazy because Jupiter was in the 8th sign from my ascendant for the last 1 year. And whenever Mercury would come and join it, bam, my income would increase double. And it's others, through collaborating with others, which is the 8th house. So it's kind of, it's so powerful, this Rashi aspect that we're talking about. And
And it's great to just experiment with it. Just start seeing how it's aspecting in your own chart, just see what it brings in. And you may not, that's why a lot of the Western transit astrology didn't give me the depth that I want. I want to know when are these things going to happen. So just experimenting with your own chart, and you start seeing those Rashi aspects lining up when these things manifest or when things are taken away. And so when things are taken away, it's usually Saturn, the North Node. And so you wouldn't think that with the Western astrology.
Saturn and the North Node.
Saturn and the North Node and the Sun. That's what Ernst talks about. Ernst talks about the North Node as being involved with that. And so I've been watching that one, because the North Node tends to bring in difficulty, especially when you get it with Saturn. So you get Saturn and the North Node Rashi aspecting together, and that brings up all this chaos and confusion. You got the chaos of eclipse blinded energy, and you've got Saturn being restrictive, so you just don't know.
And it's funny that right now the planets that give Jupiter and Mercury and the planets that take Saturn and North Node are all in Rashi aspects to Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So any house cusps you have there, they'll manifest, and then something will be taken away, I guess.
Back and forth, and it's a lot of like it's kind of that's what my question is like, does it completely cancel each other out? It's Saturn and the North Node and the sun, and also the 12th from whatever, the Lord of the 12th, without it being Jupiter and Mercury. Jupiter and Mercury are always going to be benefic, but the Lord of the 12th planet comes in, clicks in, and then you see it, and it kind of dissolves something.
Yes, Saturn, Rahu, and the Lord of the 12th for many things. So if you want to sell, if you want to know if you're going to lose your house, and Saturn and the North Node aspecting your 4th house, and the Lord of the 3rd house, which is the 12th and the 4th, is also passing there. Well, the news, unfortunately.
It's time to let go. It's time to let go a little bit. Yeah. And prepare for those things, you know, because life is full of ups and downs. We can't hold on to everything all the time. And that's been the interesting thing, because you adopt a more Vedic perspective. You know, I've had a lot of Western astrologers say they don't like Vedic because it's gloom and doom. You know, they say, oh, everything's fated and you're going to have these things and they're going to be terrible and that kind of thing. And the Western astrology seems to be more of like wanting to put a real positive slant on everything. Like you have a choice, like, okay, you can see it like this, so it'll make it more positive. And the reality is that life is both. Life is give and take. There's things that happen that you can't do anything about. And then there's beauty beyond measure. And we're going to experience both of that. And, you know, the question goes into, is everything fated or do we have free will? And I think that this is a really interesting, for me as an astrologer, it's kind of like blending the two. Well, yeah, there are some trends that are going to be fated. You're going to, you know, you're going to be drawn to a certain type of music. You like that kind of music, you know, it's just the way it is. That's the way we're drawn. That's the way we're made. We're made up in certain ways. But you can expand that. You can change. You can learn to do things differently. You can bring awareness. But it's not always through just barreling through willpower. Some of it's through really deep contemplation and asking yourself questions and then saying, is that something I want to change? And if I want to change it, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to have to push myself in new ways. And I'm going to have to align with higher principles, you know, in order to make these changes. So it's not 100% fated, but it's not all about free will either. It's not like you get a choice about how you're going to feel about something necessarily, but you can change yourself, you know, through these methods. So it's kind of like how that meets up. I like the combination of both of the different philosophies.
I like how you interpret it too as well, because I don't want to be totally on my own here, knowing that totally I'm solely responsible for my life, because the universe always tends to surprise me with something even better than I wanted. And sometimes also knowing that you have no chance to move, it totally robs you from any initiative as well. So it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle, and learning how to dance with that and how to balance it, and what the trends are that may, you know, be the mindsets that kind of get in our way, where we think, you know, we think it, but we keep beating our head up against the wall. You know, eventually we're given some grace. Like, you're allowed to change that a little bit. So, yeah.
and Channing, as a conclusion, what are you studying? Something interesting now? Are you working on something interesting? What are your favorite kind of horoscopes that you do so people can order?
Oh goodness. I really like one-on-one. I like talking with people in person. I think that it's a very interesting dance that happens, because you can get all the information in the head. You know, I study. I'm very into knowing my techniques and studying as much as I can. But when I get out of the head and then I allow my intuition, I have a very strong, powerful moon. So when I allow my intuition to come in and play, it co-creates with the person. I can start feeling a sense of what's really on for them and what's important to talk about. So it's like, as soon as I get involved in the conversation with a person one-on-one, it's beautiful what really happens, because I can feel the areas that are important for them, and they can ask specific questions, and I'll say something and they'll go, oh, that's really important. Talk more about that. And so we can get so deeply into different questions and different areas of life. So I really do enjoy working with people one-on-one. It's my favorite part.
Really, it stresses me out. I'm like, oh, it's so much easier. I get intuition when I'm alone. And now it's wonderful. So people now can go call you.
It's not what I thought. I was not expecting to be an astrologer. I was not. My background is Jungian psychology and archetypes and mythology and ancient religions and all of that. And I was not expecting, but it just came to me. And so, and I've realized that it's a very specific that I work with people. It's like a frequency healing vibe. And, I try to just have a really good lifestyle that keeps me clean, and I do a lot of meditation, so I'm not taking other people's stuff on. That's important when you're an astrologer. That's what I think can stress people out, doing astrology. If you feel drained after you're working with people, it can be because you're like actually unzipping their karma and going into their chart specifically. So we've got to keep it clean. We've got to do it, keep it light and keep it fun. So that's been the piece, is just learning how to keep the light flowing through so I can keep talking to people and not get totally like bogged down, because you can take on other people's stuff and start feeling depressed and sad and, all of that.
I get overexcited talking with people, and I can't sleep after that for 4 or 5 hours. I'm like,
that's it too, right? It's a very interesting dance, how our frequencies work with each other, and just being in a healing field and working with people on this level has just been so fascinating and so interesting. But I am finding that I do like working with people one-on-one, and that it's it's a gift. It's something going on there that I enjoy and appreciate. That's co-creative. It's them and myself. So
you have very soothing energy as well, and you explain so easy, you teach so easy. It's just a person getting a reading with you would be like learning astrology, basically.
It's a little bit of a course, yes, definitely.
We've worked together a lot in Chinese and many horoscopes for Astrolada, and I'll sometimes read her horoscopes, and I absolutely love them because it's like taking a course. She explains to the client like step by step how she came to that conclusion, why exactly they're going to have this career. And writing takes a long time, so it probably takes forever to get that horoscope, but speaking, you understand it even more clearly. And so anyone I suppose you're very busy. I don't know, maybe you'll get a lot of orders now after we speak. And I know that you do also gems consultations, that you tell people what gems will be beneficial for them, and what are the services?
Well, I work with compatibility. You want to take 2 charts and put them together and see how that's going to feel. I love doing the gemstone compatibility. A lot of people just ask me one question because they don't necessarily feel like they want a whole reading at that point. They want to get a feel for what astrology is even about or what can be answered. So people will ask one question, and that's always very interesting because it always just clicks into place. It always has to do with the transits and why they're asking the question at that point. And just basic Skype readings, the one-on-one, the chart reading, we can go into specific areas of life, or it can be just a general reading. Some people want to know about health. Some people want to know about career. Some people want to know about their children. Some people just want clarity on what their path is. That's been really fun. It's because I really dabble in all those areas. I really like to be able to answer all of the different questions that people have. And I get so many types of questions that it's really been a huge education, because if I don't know, if I go, oh, that's not something I've ever heard of, really, I just go study. I have got a lot of 8th house, so I go research. I start filling it all out, and it's like I'm grateful when I get questions I don't know, because then I learn deeply and a whole other subject. And it's always fascinating to me. So that's what I'm here to do, is learn and to share what it is that I've learned. And it's fascinating to me because I've had astrology in my life so long that I know the places where it's been very confusing for me. And that's probably why I spend a lot of time trying to explain it in a way that really is practical. So it's not over explanation. It's not like, oh yeah, here's 2 years worth of information, but it's just really trying to get it really broken down into what's applicable and what's practical to know. So, if you have a question of why I cannot follow through with this thing, I'm going to explain a little bit about what the sun means, in your chart. I'm going to explain a little bit about why knowing about that element of that planet is going to be helpful to you, because then it's bringing it up into the consciousness, and you can think about that later. And as you're thinking about these things and bringing things up into our consciousness, you're actually working on your own chart. You're actually coming into a, you know, more strengthening of these elements. So that's why it takes so much time to kind of explain these basics, because it, in the long run, it's like you're asking these questions because you want something to get better in your life usually. So that's why I take that time, is because I really care about the earth, the planet, humanity. You know, I want people to feel the joy and the beauty that's available to each person intrinsically. And so through that self-awareness and the awareness of what these archetypes are showing us, we can get a foundation of how to bring that into a
Hello?
different frequency.
Sorry, yeah. So basically when you're doing a chart, you almost like allow the person to become a participant in their own transformation through the listening of this chart, and how you're helping them to feel like co-creators in their future and destiny, rather than just, okay, you're gonna get married, you're gonna lose your house, you're gonna have a child. Then it's like, what's the point of these events? The person wants to know the meaning, or how they can contribute or improve it, or how can they, you know, it's this personal element of participation that's the most key one for us.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially when you have understanding of something, with understanding comes the first step to change, and with clarity and understanding, the first step to, you know.
Yes, because you can get married and have the worst time in the world. You know, you can have a totally, but so your astrologer can say, yeah, you're going to get married at this point, but then it happens, and what do you do with that? You know, if it's not fulfilling you, or you're not understanding why you're still not happy, that kind of thing. So it's like taking it a little bit deeper. And yeah, as an astrologer, I can't do the work for each person. I can give as much information as I can, but there's usually a list of homework, you know, there's a list of things to start doing, to actively, just like you said, I love that, actively participating in of how you can use this information. That's the big piece of it. And that's what I've really enjoyed learning about the Vedic astrology, because it gives you so much more to kind of wrap your mind around and go, okay, now I'm gonna like really start developing these things. And then there's remedials. There's a whole list of remedials. So gemstones, just one of them. I mean, there's lots of types of remedials that people can do to work with their
sounds, smells, tastes,
colors, mantras, places. Yeah, there's so many different things that we can do. Learning how, you know, reading, develop Jupiter, reading more things about wisdom. So you need to develop Mars, reading more things about strategy and war and logic, you know, that kind of thing. Like starting to just educate yourself more in the area of the planet that needs to get developed can be really helpful.
Wonderful. You should make a class about remedials. I think people will be fascinated, where we look at weak planets and how they can be improved, basically, and what exactly to do. That can be fantastic. You're in your hands instead of waiting for that dasher to come to finally do that. You know, you start at least a little bit. You're probably not gonna make you're not gonna totally change, but you're gonna grow a little bit and improve the circumstances of that area of your life. Consciously, very proud of. So instead of your husband beating you, now he'll just be insulting to you. I'm sorry, that's a horrible. I make very inappropriate jokes. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I mean, it happens. That's the truth of it, is it's reality. It's not about, you know, minimalizing someone's experience, but it's about how to bring light to it, you know, on some level. It's like saying, okay, we can be light about these things, even though life is heavy sometimes. It's like, how do we bring light to any situation to actually be able to work with it in consciousness? So, you know, I know that twisted humor kind of thing. So, but yeah, it can be helpful. It can.
Well, thank you so much, Channing. I'm going to put the link to your services. I would really love us to sit one day and just talk about some topic that you love as well. We can even just make some classes. People, they're so hungry for knowledge, and knowledge is so precious nowadays. Nothing is as important as knowledge, especially knowledge that helps you progress and feel happier and better person. And I think you have so much of information to give and so much of knowledge and experience to share with people. So we can discuss that. And if everyone loved chanting, please beg her to do some classes.
That sounds fun, Lada. I'd have a great time doing it again.
Yeah, so I invite everyone to give us some ideas for another talk that you'd like with Channing, that you really want to hear her talk about. Thank you so much, Channing. It was wonderful having you here. I also learned when I speak with you. I learned a lot, and I got reminded a lot as well. So it was wonderful having you here. Have a great day, and be careful with that Neptune transit.
I'm being very careful and enjoying it. And I'm going to do a video. I'm actually going to do a video with Ryan on the outer planets, but I'm going to, bring that back to this too, because this is like for the Western astrologers. I'm going to start talking to the Vedic astrologers about how, what to bring in that's about the Western concepts and all that.
And many Vedic astrologers are incorporating the outers into their because the outers, the psychological planets, the invisible that actually color how we feel inside, and the big psychological changes that happen. Nothing is as colorful as they say as outer transits.
Definitely not. It's been. I'll talk about it at some point. After it's done, I'll be like, okay, this is what that was like.
Because now you're not clear what Neptune is all about, because you're in the middle of the fog. You understand it once you come out of the fog and you see it was a fog.
Yeah, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. And I've got a big painting of Krishna on my wall, so I just hang out with Krishna because Krishna is the incarnation. The outer planets are the incarnations of these Vedic deities specifically. So I just kind of try to get the
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You should tell us sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. So it's not a religious thing. It's just knowing that the stories are about that experience.
So basically, the Vedics, the Puranas, the Vedics, the ancient books, they knew about the outer planets, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, and they actually. Oh wow, we have to talk about that. I'm so.
The Trimurti, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva.
The three. Shiva must be three.
Right? Shiva's Pluto, Vishnu is Neptune, and Brahman is Uranus. So,
I Brahman on my wall because I'm in the middle of a Uranus roller coaster here.
Yeah, there it is. So individuality, how you're different, how you're unique, manifestation of spirit in this incarnation. So we're all one, but each within that are the layers of individuality and the creative process that comes with it. So yeah, tune into that one. I'll be talking a lot about that soon too. So yeah.
I can't wait to have you here again. I'm sure people as well. You're such a wonderful talker, knowledgeable astrologer, and thank you so much, Channing. I'm not going to keep you anymore. We're over the 1 hour 30. It was amazing having you. Get ready to get showered with orders.
Great.
I can't wait to have you soon.
Thank you, Lada.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be very soon again here with Channing, or whatever questions you have, we can discuss them. Thank you.